Han-Jun smiled calmly as he sat at the long polished dining table, his fingers tapping lightly against the glass of wine beside him. Beside him sat Annie. Across from them sat Mrs. Han. And in that moment, Annie wished she was invisible. Mrs. Han slowly dropped her chopsticks and leaned back in her chair. Her eyes scanned Annie from head to toe, cold, sharp, and judging. Han-Jun, she said quietly, can't you see she's too old for you? The words hung in the air. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Annie's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Before she could even process it, Han-Jun responded. She should be grateful I don't mind that she's 30. Her breath caught. For a second, Annie thought she misheard him. But she didn't. Mrs. Han gave a small, satisfied smile. You know, she continued, some black women age well, but some don't. Some of them start looking older than their age. She leaned forward slightly. Let's hope you're not one of those. Han-Jun chuckled softly and leaned toward Annie, his voice low enough that it felt personal, but loud enough to hurt. Maybe you'll still look good when you're older. That was it. That was the moment something inside Annie broke. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But slowly, like glass cracking under pressure. She forced a smile. Because that's what she had been doing for 4 years. Smiling. Enduring. Adjusting. Becoming smaller. She glanced at Han-Jun. He didn't look at her. He never did when it mattered. Instead, he picked up his glass again like nothing had happened. We have an important event tomorrow, he said casually. The Korea Tech Association Gala. Mrs. Han nodded. Then make sure she dresses properly this time. Her eyes flicked to Annie again. Not too loud. Not too foreign. Annie swallowed. I understand, she said softly. Han-Jun finally looked at her. Do you? He asked. There was no warmth in his voice. Only expectation. Only control. Annie nodded again. Yes. I do. But deep inside, she didn't. Because for the first time, a question began to rise in her chest. When did love start to feel like this? If that moment made your chest tighten, if you felt Annie's pain like it was your own, then this story is about to take you on a journey you won't forget. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel small, if you've ever stayed longer than you should have, then you need to watch this till the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because what Annie is about to go through will change everything. The drive back from Han Estate was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Annie sat beside Han-Jun, staring out the window as the city lights passed in blurred streaks. She wanted to speak. She wanted to ask him, why do you let them talk to me like that? But the words never came out. Because she already knew the answer. He didn't see anything wrong with it. Han-Jun suddenly spoke. Tomorrow is important. Annie turned slightly. I know. I mean it, he continued. This gala is not just an event. It's business. It's connections. It's growth. She nodded. I've always supported you. He glanced at her briefly. Then don't embarrass me. Those words hit harder than anything his mother had said. Annie blinked. I wouldn't. Just make a good impression, he cut in. That's all I need from you. That's all. Not partnership. Not love. Just presentation. She looked down at her hands. Neatly manicured. Perfect. Just like he liked. But somehow, never enough. The next morning, Annie stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom. She had taken her time. Carefully. She wore a fitted dress that hugged her shape perfectly. Elegant. Confident. Beautiful. Her long black hair fell smoothly over her shoulders. Her makeup was soft but flawless. She looked at herself and whispered, You've done everything right. For a moment. She believed it. Then she stepped out. Han-Jun was waiting. He turned slowly. His eyes moved from her head, down to her heels. Silence. Then. That's what you're wearing? Her heart dropped. You don't like it? He shrugged. It's okay. Okay. That word again. But it's too bold, he continued. It draws attention. Annie's fingers curled slightly. I thought. It looks too African, he said flatly. The words cut deep. Sharp. Final. I need something more Korean. Her confidence collapsed instantly. The girl who had smiled at herself in the mirror disappeared. In her place stood someone unsure. Small. Let's go, he said, already turning away. The gala hall was breathtaking. Crystal lights. Soft music. People dressed in wealth and power. The Korea Tech Association Gala. Everything Han-jun had been preparing for. Everything Annie had been preparing for too. But for different reasons. They sat together at first. Then Han-jun leaned closer. Remember what I told you? She nodded. This is where deals are made, he continued. Where connections are built. I know. Don't embarrass me. There it was again. He stood up. I'll be back. Annie opened her mouth. I wanted to ask about my speech. But he was already gone. Just like that. She sat alone. A glass of champagne in her hand. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Her eyes searched the room. Then she saw him. Han-jun. Laughing. Relaxed. Happy. Surrounded by executives. And he didn't even look her way. Annie glanced at her wristwatch. Her heart began to race. She was supposed to be on stage. Right now. But her name was never called. Instead, another speaker walked up. Annie froze. No, she whispered. Her chest tightened. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes moved back to Han-jun. He saw her. Just for a second. Then, he looked away. Like she didn't matter. Like she never did. And in that moment, Annie finally felt it. Not confusion. Not doubt. But truth. She was alone in a relationship. Annie sat frozen in her chair, her fingers wrapped tightly around the stem of her champagne glass. The applause in the hall sounded distant. Muted. Like she was underwater. On stage, a well-dressed Korean woman spoke confidently into the microphone, her voice clear, her presence strong. But Annie couldn't hear a word she was saying. Because that spot, that moment, was supposed to be hers. Her lips parted slightly. No, this can't be right, she whispered under her breath. She quickly looked down at her phone. No message. No call. No explanation. Her heart began to pound faster. She lifted her gaze again, searching for Han-jun. And there he was. Just a few meters away. Sitting comfortably with a group of executives. Laughing. Smiling. Like nothing had happened. Like she didn't exist. Annie's chest tightened. Then she saw it. A woman. Young. Elegant. Korean. Sitting close to him. Too close. The woman leaned in, whispering something into Han-jun's ear. He laughed. A real laugh. Not the cold, controlled one he gave Annie. This one was warm. Easy. Natural. The woman placed her hand lightly on his arm. And he didn't move it away. Annie felt something twist painfully inside her. Her fingers trembled slightly. Don't stand up, don't cause a scene, she whispered to herself. His words echoed in her head. Don't embarrass me. She swallowed hard and forced herself to sit still. Maybe this was business. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe. No. Deep down. She knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This was who he had become. Or maybe, who he had always been. 10 minutes later, Annie stood up. Her legs felt weak, but her mind was made up. She walked toward the table slowly. Each step felt heavy. Han-jun noticed her before she reached them. There she comes, he said casually, a faint smirk playing on his lips. The group turned to look at her. Their eyes scanned her. Measured her. Judged her. Just like always. Annie sat down quietly. The woman beside Han-jun tilted her head slightly. Is she your wife? She asked, her voice soft but curious. Han-jun didn't hesitate. Yes. My fiancé. Something about the way he said it felt distant. Like he was introducing a stranger. Not someone he loved. Annie inhaled slowly. I was supposed to speak tonight, she said, her voice calm but firm. Why haven't they called my name? There was a brief silence. Han-jun leaned back slightly. I made some changes. Annie blinked. Changes? Yes. Last minute. Her heart dropped. Last minute, she repeated, her voice shaking now. You told me for weeks that I would be speaking. I prepared. I practiced. I didn't want anything to go wrong, he cut in smoothly. The words hit like a slap. What do you mean? Han-Jun sighed lightly, as if she was being difficult. You're still adjusting. Adjusting? Annie whispered. To Korean culture, he said plainly. You can be too much sometimes. The table went quiet. The woman beside him watched with interest. One of the directors leaned forward slightly. I thought you said she was a financial expert, he said. Han-Jun laughed softly. She is, but she's very African. The words hung in the air like poison. She's still learning how things work here, he continued. I didn't want her to embarrass me. A few people chuckled. Low. Uncomfortable. But loud enough. Another voice joined. Foreign women can be like that, one of the men said. Too outspoken. Too independent, another added. Han-Jun nodded. My mother is helping to train her before the wedding. Laughter followed. This time louder. Clearer. Cruel. Annie sat there. Still. Silent. Her face calm. But inside, everything was breaking. Piece by piece. She had defended this man. Loved this man. Sacrificed for this man. And this was how he saw her. A project. An embarrassment. Something to fix. Her throat tightened painfully. But she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Not again. The woman beside Han-Jun turned to Annie. So, where do you work? Annie looked at her. For a second, she considered answering. Explaining. Proving herself. Like she always did. But suddenly, she was tired. So tired. I work, Annie said quietly, but I don't think it matters here. The woman blinked, slightly surprised. Han-Jun frowned. Annie stood up. I need some air. No one stopped her. No one cared. She walked away slowly. Gracefully. But each step felt heavier than the last. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt endless. When the doors opened, a cool breeze hit her face. She stepped out. The city lights stretched endlessly before her. Beautiful. Peaceful. Nothing like the storm inside her. Annie walked to the railing and gripped it tightly. Her hands trembled. Why are you doing this to yourself? She whispered. Her voice cracked. Why are you letting him treat you like this? Silence answered her. Then, a voice inside her spoke. Because you love him. Tears slid down her cheeks. Is this love? She whispered. Love requires sacrifice. The answer came quickly. But this time, it didn't comfort her. It hurt. Because deep down, another truth was rising. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this. Her grip tightened. Her breathing grew uneven. I'm losing myself, she whispered. And for the first time, she didn't try to deny it. Behind her, a door opened quietly. Footsteps followed. Slow. Measured. Someone had been watching her. For a long time. And now, he had finally decided to step forward. You look like you're fighting a war no one else can see. The voice was calm. Deep. Close. Annie froze. Her fingers tightened around the railing as her heart skipped. Slowly, she turned. And for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Standing a few steps behind her was a man unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall. Composed. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His presence was quiet, but powerful. The kind that didn't need attention, yet commanded it. His face was sharp, clean, almost unreal. His hair styled neatly in a soft K-pop fashion that somehow made him look both gentle and dangerous at the same time. But it was his eyes. Dark. Focused. Watching her like she mattered. Not like something to judge. Not like something to fix. But like someone worth understanding. Annie swallowed. I'm sorry, she said softly. He took a step closer, but not too close. Just enough. You were gripping that railing like it offended you, he said lightly. I figured something, or someone, must have. Annie let out a small, shaky breath. I just needed air. He nodded. Most people say that when they're trying not to cry. That hit too close. Annie looked away quickly. I'm not crying. Not yet, he replied gently. There was no mockery in his voice. No pity. Just truth. And somehow, that made it worse. Silence stretched between them. But it wasn't awkward. It was steady, safe. Then his eyes moved over her dress. And something shifted in his expression. That color, he said quietly. It's perfect on you. Annie blinked. She wasn't expecting that. It is, she asked. It is, he said firmly. Whoever chose it understands beauty. A small, broken laugh escaped her. Well, my fiancé disagrees. The man's brow lifted slightly. He said it was too bold, she continued. Too African. The man stared at her. For a second, he didn't speak. Then your fiancé is a fool. Annie's eyes widened. The bluntness shocked her. But something else followed. Relief. A soft laugh slipped out of her lips. Real. Unexpected. And for the first time that night, she felt something lift off her chest. I shouldn't laugh, she said. You should, he replied. Especially when someone says something stupid. Annie shook her head slightly. You don't even know him. I don't need to, he said calmly. I can tell a lot about a man by how he talks about the woman beside him. That sentence landed deep. Too deep. Annie went quiet. I'm Chung-hee, he said after a moment, extending his hand. Annie hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Annie. His grip was warm. Steady. Different from Han-jun's. Han-jun held her like ownership. Chung-hee held her like she had a choice. How long have you been in Korea? He asked. 4 years. And you still let someone talk to you like that? The question caught her off guard. It's not like that. Then what is it like? He asked, his tone still calm. Annie opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, the words came. Fast. Uncontrolled. He brought me here tonight, she said. He promised me I would be speaking. Chung-hee listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't look away. But he replaced me, she continued, her voice shaking. He laughed at me with his colleagues, told them I was too African, too loud. Her throat tightened. And the worst part is. She paused. Her voice dropped. I keep making excuses for him. Silence. Heavy. Real. Chung-hee studied her carefully. Not her dress. Not her face. But her pain. Then he spoke. You know what I see? Annie looked up slowly. I see a woman who has been trying too hard to fit into a space that was never meant for her. Her heart skipped. I see someone shrinking herself, just to be accepted by someone who doesn't even deserve her. Annie felt tears sting her eyes. You don't know me, she whispered. I know enough, he said softly. And I know this, any man who treats you like an embarrassment. He paused. His voice turned firmer. Does not deserve to stand beside you. That was it. That was the moment. The words she didn't know she needed. The truth she had been running from. Annie looked at him. Really looked this time. Who are you? She asked quietly. Chung-hee gave a small smile. I'm the CEO of Hebon Bank. Annie blinked. That name. She knew it. Everyone did. One of the biggest banks in Korea. You're serious? She asked. I don't joke about work, he replied calmly. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. He handed it to her. I want you to speak at my company's annual gala next week. Annie stared at the card. You've known me for 5 minutes. I've listened to you for 5 minutes, he corrected. That's enough. Her heart pounded. You're brilliant, he continued. You just forgot it. Annie's fingers tightened around the card. Call me, he said simply. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. I have to go. He stepped back. But before he turned. Annie, he said. She looked up. Stop apologizing for who you are. And just like that. He walked away. Leaving her standing there. Holding a card. Holding a choice. Holding something new. That night, Annie didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her mind replaying everything. Han-jun's voice. His laughter. His insults. Then, Chung-hee's voice. You deserve better. She turned slightly, clutching the card tighter. How can a stranger see me clearer than someone I've loved for 4 years, she whispered. No answer came. Only silence. And truth. Morning came slowly, but her decision came fast. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. She stared at the number. Then dialed. It rang once. Twice. Then. Chung-hee. His voice was calm. Like he expected her call. Annie took a breath. I'm ready. There was a pause. Then. Good, he said. Because this is where your life begins to change. Chung-hee's voice stayed in Annie's ears long after the call ended. She sat still on the edge of her bed, her phone resting in her hand, her heart beating faster than it had in a long time. Not from fear. Not from pain. But from something unfamiliar. Possibility. Next Friday, Chung-hee had said. My company's annual gala. You'll be one of the keynote speakers. Annie blinked slowly. A keynote speaker. Not hidden. Not silenced. Not replaced. Seen. Are you sure? She had asked, her voice almost unsure of itself. I don't make offers I'm unsure about, he replied calmly. I read your work months ago. I've been looking for you. That sentence had shaken her. Not because of the opportunity, but because someone had noticed her, even when she thought no one did. Later that evening, the front door opened. Han-jun walked in. His footsteps were steady, controlled, like always. Annie stood in the living room, waiting. Her hands were clasped together tightly. Hi, she said softly. Han-jun barely glanced at her. He loosened his tie and walked past her. You're back late, he said. I had somewhere to be. He nodded once. No curiosity. No concern. Nothing. Annie swallowed. I'll be attending an event next week, she added. That got his attention. He stopped walking. Slowly turned. What event? A corporate gala, she replied. I've been invited to speak. Han-jun's eyes narrowed slightly. Speak. Yes. A pause. Then a quiet, almost amused breath left him. Who invited you? Chung-hee. Silence. This time, heavier. Han-jun stepped closer. Chung-hee from Hebon Bank. Yes. He stared at her for a moment longer than usual. Then. Interesting. That was all he said. No congratulations. No pride. Just that one word. Cold. Distant. Like everything else. That night, Annie lay awake again. But this time, her thoughts were different. Not filled with pain, but questions. What if I stop trying so hard to please him? What if I choose myself, just once? Her chest tightened. Because even thinking that felt like betrayal. But another voice whispered. Or maybe, it's freedom. The next morning, Annie stood in front of the mirror again. But something had changed. She wasn't trying to look perfect. She was trying to look like herself. She wore something simple. Elegant. Confident. Not for Han-jun. Not for approval. But for her. She stared at her reflection. You're still here, she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. Friday came faster than she expected. The Hebon Bank Gala. It was different from Han-jun's event. Less show. More substance. Less judgment. More focus. But Annie's heart still raced as she stood backstage. Her script was in her hand. Her name was about to be called. What if I fail? She whispered to herself. You won't. She turned. Chung-hee stood behind her. Calm. Composed. Watching her. You prepared, he continued. You know your work. Annie exhaled slowly. I was supposed to do this before, she said quietly. But someone made you feel like you couldn't, he finished. She nodded. Chung-hee stepped slightly closer. But I'm not that person, he said. And tonight, no one will silence you. Those words settled deep inside her. Steady. Strong. Real. Go, he said softly. Show them who you are. Please welcome our next speaker. Her name echoed through the hall. Annie. The lights felt brighter. The stage felt bigger. But her steps were steady. She walked forward. Slowly. Confidently. And when she reached the microphone, she paused. Just for a second. Then she spoke. Her voice was clear, strong, beautiful. She spoke about finance, innovation, global markets. But more than that, she spoke with confidence, with presence, with power. And the room listened. Really listened. Not because of who she was with, but because of who she was. When she finished, silence. Then, applause. Loud. Real. Earned. Annie blinked back tears. But this time, they weren't from pain. They were from pride. After the event, Chung-hee approached her with a small smile. "You did well," he said. Annie laughed softly. "I didn't pass out, so I guess that's a win." He chuckled. "No," he said. "That was more than a win." Their eyes met. And for a moment, everything felt still. Different. "Come," he said. "Let's get a drink." They sat in a quiet cafe later that night. No noise. No pressure. Just calm. "How long have you been with him?" Chung-hee asked. 4 years. He nodded slowly. "Are you happy?" The question hit harder this time. Because now, she knew the answer. Annie looked down at her cup. Then back at him. "No." Silence followed. Honest. Heavy. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I keep trying, but nothing changes." Chung-hee leaned back slightly. "Then stop trying for someone who isn't trying for you." Annie's chest tightened. "It's not that easy," she said. "I'm scared." "Of what?" She hesitated. "Starting over, being alone, maybe he's right about me." Chung-hee frowned slightly. "What did he say?" "That I'm too African, too loud, too much." Chung-hee let out a soft laugh. "That's not a problem," he said. "That's your power." Annie looked at him. "You really think so?" "I know so," he replied. Then his tone softened. "You can leave that relationship, Annie, but only if you choose to." She stared at him. Her heart racing. Her mind spinning. For the first time. The idea didn't feel impossible. It felt real. She nodded slowly. "I think I'm ready." The house felt colder than usual. Not because of the weather, but because something between them had changed. Annie stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot slowly, her mind far away. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, tense, like something was waiting to explode. The front door opened. Han Jun walked in. His presence filled the room instantly. Sharp, controlled, unpredictable. Annie didn't turn immediately. "Welcome back," she said softly. He didn't respond. Not even a hum. Just the sound of his shoes against the floor as he walked past her. Like she wasn't there. Like she never was. Annie closed her eyes briefly. "Not today," she told herself. "You won't stay silent today." They sat at the dining table minutes later. Plates placed neatly. Food untouched. The silence stretched between them like a wall. Annie forced a small smile. "I made your favorite," she said. Han Jun glanced at the food. Then back at his phone. No reaction. No appreciation. Nothing. Annie's fingers tightened under the table. "Han Jun." He sighed softly, annoyed. "What is it?" Her heart pounded. "I think we need to talk." He finally looked at her. Not with concern, but irritation. "About what?" Her voice trembled slightly. "About us." A pause. Then he leaned back in his chair. "If this is about the gala again." "It is," she cut in. That surprised him. Annie never interrupted him. Not before. "You humiliated me," she continued, her voice low but steady. "In front of everyone." Han Jun's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "No," she said firmly. "I'm not." The air shifted. Something in her tone was different. Stronger. "You promised me that opportunity," she continued. "I prepared for weeks. You didn't even tell me you replaced me." "I did what was best," he replied coldly. "For who?" she asked. "For my company." That answer hit deep. "So I don't matter," she whispered. Han Jun shrugged. "This is business, Annie." She stared at him. "And what am I?" Silence. Then, "You need to be more Korean." The words came out flat. Like a conclusion. Like a judgment already decided. Annie blinked slowly. I'm trying, she said. Not enough. Her chest tightened. What does that even mean? It means, he said, leaning forward slightly. Nothing about you fits into my world anymore. That was it. That was the moment. The final crack. Annie felt something inside her go quiet. Too quiet. Dangerously quiet. She nodded slowly. I see. Han-Jun picked up his phone again. Conversation over. Just like that. But Annie wasn't done. Then maybe I don't belong in your world, she said. He paused. Looked up. For the first time that night, there was something in his eyes. Not love. Not care. But something close to irritation. Is this because of that man? He asked. Annie frowned. What man? The one from Hebon Bank, he said sharply. Chung-hee. The name felt different now. Stronger. He gave me an opportunity, Annie replied calmly. Han-Jun scoffed. Of course he did. What does that mean? It means men like him don't do things for free. Annie's eyes hardened slightly. And men like you, she asked quietly. What do you do? Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Han-Jun leaned back slowly. You're changing, he said. No, Annie replied. I'm waking up. The next morning, Annie stood outside Hebon Bank. The building was tall. Modern. Imposing. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She walked in. Confident. Focused. Ready. The interview room was quiet. 3 executives sat across from her. Chung-hee sat at the far end. Watching. Observing. Not interfering. Tell us why you think you're qualified for this position, one of them said. Annie took a breath. Then she spoke. Clear. Precise. Confident. She didn't shrink. She didn't soften her words. She didn't apologize. She answered every question with strength. Every challenge with logic. Every doubt with proof. And when she finished, the room was silent. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was impressed. That evening, she stepped out of the building. And there he was, leaning casually against his car. Chung-hee. You passed, he said simply. Annie smiled. You already knew that. I hoped, he corrected. She shook her head, amused. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. He looked at her for a moment. Longer than usual. I didn't do anything special, he said quietly. I just didn't ignore what was already there. That sentence stayed with her. Days passed. And everything began to shift. Annie started her new job. A better environment. Better people. Better energy. And slowly, she started to feel like herself again. Chung-hee became part of her routine. Dropping her off. Checking on her. Talking to her. Not controlling. Not demanding. Just present. And that scared her. Because this felt different. Real. That evening, Annie sat across from Han-Jun again. But this time, she wasn't trying. I got the job, she said calmly. He didn't react. Good for you. That was all. No pride. No support. Nothing. Annie nodded. Then she stood up. I'm done trying, she said quietly. Han-Jun looked up sharply. What does that mean? She met his eyes. Clear. Certain. It means I'm done begging to be seen. The room fell silent. And for the first time, Han-Jun didn't have an answer. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a place two strangers shared, out of habit, not love. Annie moved quietly through the living room, her heels soft against the floor. She didn't rush anymore. She didn't try to fill the silence. She had stopped trying. And somehow, that hurt Han-Jun more than her words ever did. 3 days. That was how long they had gone without a real conversation. No arguments. No laughter. Just distance. Cold, quiet distance. Han-Jun sat in his study, staring at his laptop, but not really seeing anything on the screen. His jaw tightened. Something was wrong. Not with business. Not with the company. But with her. Annie. She wasn't asking questions anymore. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't even reacting. And that unsettled him. Across the house, Annie sat on her bed, her phone in her hand. A message blinked on the screen. Chung-hee, are you okay? She stared at it for a few seconds. Then typed back. Annie, I don't know anymore. The reply came almost instantly. Chung-hee, that means something is wrong. She exhaled slowly. Annie, it's complicated. A pause. Then, Chung-hee, come out. Let's talk. That evening, Annie sat across from him in a quiet restaurant. Soft lights. Low music. Peaceful. The complete opposite of her life lately. She wrapped her fingers around the warm cup in front of her. How long are you going to keep saying it's complicated? Chung-hee asked gently. She looked up at him. Tired. Honest. I've tried everything, she said softly. I've changed how I speak, how I dress, how I act. Her voice cracked slightly. But nothing is enough. Chung-hee didn't interrupt. Didn't rush her. You know what hurts the most, she continued. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Silence followed. Heavy. Real. Then why are you still there? He asked. The question was simple. But it hit deep. Annie looked down. Because I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Starting over, being alone, she whispered. Her voice dropped. And maybe he's right about me. Chung-hee frowned. What did he say? That I'm too much, she said. Too African, too loud, too different. Chung-hee let out a soft breath. Then leaned forward slightly. Look at me, Annie. She did. You are not too much, he said firmly. You are exactly enough for the right person. Her eyes filled with tears. But what if I never find that person? She asked. A pause. Then. You will, he said quietly. But not if you stay where you are invisible. That sentence broke something inside her. Not in pain, but in truth. That night, Annie walked into the house later than usual. Han-jun was waiting. Sitting in the living room. Still. Watching. Where were you? He asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. I went out, she replied simply. With him. She didn't answer. That was enough. Han-jun stood up slowly. You're getting comfortable, he said. With what? Annie asked. With disrespect. She blinked. Disrespect, she repeated. Yes, he said sharply. Going out with another man while you're still my fiancé? Annie's expression changed. Not fear. Not guilt. Just clarity. I was talking, she said calmly. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. That hit. Han-jun's jaw tightened. You're crossing a line. No, Annie said. I've been standing on the wrong side of it for too long. Silence. Thick. Tense. Han-jun stepped closer. You're changing. She nodded. Yes. And I don't like it. Annie met his eyes. I know. The next morning, Han-jun sat in his office. His phone buzzed. A message. He opened it. And froze. A picture. Annie. Sitting across from Chung-hee. Laughing. Relaxed. Happy. Something he hadn't seen in a long time. His grip tightened around the phone. His chest burned. Not with love. But something darker. Possession. Ego. Control slipping. That evening, Annie sat at her desk, finishing work. Her phone rang. Han-jun. She hesitated, then picked up. Where are you? He asked immediately. At work. Stay there. The line went dead. 40 minutes later. He walked in. Sharp. Angry. Unpredictable. Employees turned to look. Whispers followed. Annie stood up slowly. Han-jun. What is going on? He snapped. The room fell silent. This is not the place, she said quietly. Then where is the place? He fired back. Because clearly, you've been very busy. Her chest tightened. But she didn't step back. Lower your voice. No, he said. You explain yourself. Chung-hee appeared behind her. Calm. Unshaken. You're causing a scene, he said evenly. Han-jun turned sharply. So it's true. Chung-hee didn't react. You've been ignoring an incredible woman, he continued calmly. So I decided to pay attention. That sentence hit like fire. Han Jun stepped forward. She is my fiancé. Chung Hee's gaze hardened slightly. Then you should have treated her like one. Silence. Dead silence. All eyes on them. Then, Annie moved. Slowly. Deliberately. She reached for her hand. Her ring. And pulled it off. The small sound of metal sliding free felt louder than anything. She placed it gently on the table. I'm not anymore, she said. Han Jun froze. What? I'm done, she continued. I tried to talk to you. I tried to fix this. Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. But you never listened. The room held its breath. You don't love me, she said quietly. You just wanted to control me. Han Jun's face darkened. You're making a mistake. Annie shook her head slowly. No, she said. I'm finally making the right one. The silence after Annie dropped the ring was loud. Too loud. It echoed in every corner of the office. Employees stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Because everyone could feel it. Something irreversible had just happened. Han Jun stared at the ring on the table. Then slowly, he looked up at Annie. You're serious? He asked. His voice was low. Dangerously calm. Annie didn't hesitate. Yes. That one word cut deeper than anything else. Han Jun laughed. But there was no humor in it. Because of him, he asked, turning slightly toward Chung Hee. Annie's expression didn't change. This isn't about him, she said. This is about me. That only made it worse. Han Jun's pride cracked. You think you can just walk away, he snapped. After everything I've done for you. Annie frowned. What have you done for me? She asked quietly. The question hit harder than an insult. Han Jun stepped forward. I gave you a life, he said. I gave you status. A name. A place in my world. Annie shook her head slowly. No, she said. You gave me a cage. The words landed like thunder. A few people gasped softly. Chung Hee remained still. Watching. Waiting. Han Jun's control finally snapped. He reached for Annie's wrist and grabbed it tightly. Come with me, he said through clenched teeth. Annie winced. Let go. You're not leaving like this. I already did, she replied firmly. His grip tightened. I said come with me. Let her go. Chung Hee's voice cut through the tension. Calm. But sharp. Han Jun turned. This doesn't concern you. It does now, Chung Hee replied. His eyes were no longer soft. They were cold. Focused. Protective. You've said enough, Chung Hee continued. You've done enough. Han Jun scoffed. You think you know her better than me? Chung Hee didn't hesitate. I know enough to see you don't deserve her. The words hit like fire. Han Jun released Annie's wrist abruptly. Stay out of this, he snapped. But something had shifted. The power he once had was slipping. And everyone could see it. Is everything okay here? A manager stepped closer, nervous. Phones were already out. People were recording. Whispers filled the room. This wasn't private anymore. This was public. And Han Jun hated that. He turned back to Annie. His voice dropped again. You're humiliating me. Annie's eyes softened slightly. But not in weakness. In clarity. No, she said. I'm freeing myself. That sentence silenced everything. Even the whispers stopped. Because this wasn't just a breakup. This was a release. Han Jun shook his head. You'll regret this, he said. Annie didn't respond. Because for the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt peace. Chung Hee stepped slightly in front of her. Not blocking her. But standing with her. A quiet support. A silent promise. You should leave, he said to Han Jun. That was the final push. Han Jun looked around. At the people. At the phones. At the whispers. His image. His control. Slipping. He exhaled sharply. Then turned. And walked out. Without another word. The moment the door closed. The tension broke. Noise returned. Whispers grew louder. Phones kept recording. Annie stood still. Her heart racing. Her hands shaking. But she didn't fall apart. Not this time. Are you okay? Chung-hee's voice was softer now. She nodded slowly. I think so. He studied her for a moment. Then, come, he said gently. They left the building quietly. The evening air hit her face. Cool. Fresh. Free. Annie inhaled deeply, like she had been holding her breath for years. And only just let it go. They walked in silence for a while. Side by side. No pressure. No expectations. Just calm. Does it hurt? Chung-hee asked. Annie thought for a moment. Then nodded. Yes. A pause. But not the way I expected. How? She looked ahead. At least now. I know the truth. Her voice was steady. I wasn't losing him, she continued. I was losing myself. Chung-hee glanced at her. And for a moment, there was something deeper in his eyes. Respect. Admiration. Something growing. They stopped at a quiet cafe. Sat across from each other. No noise. No chaos. Just stillness. Thank you, Annie said suddenly. For what? He asked. For standing up for me. Chung-hee shook his head. You stood up for yourself, he said. I just made sure no one pushed you back down. Her chest tightened slightly. Because that mattered. More than anything. Later that night, Annie stood outside her apartment. Her apartment. Not his. Not theirs. Hers. She turned to Chung-hee. You don't have to stay, she said. He gave a small smile. I know. A pause. But I want to. That simple sentence. It felt different. Safe. Inside, the space was quiet. Warm. Real. Annie walked in slowly. Looked around. This feels strange, she admitted. Chung-hee leaned against the wall. New beginnings usually do. She smiled softly. That night, they talked. About everything. About nothing. About life. About fear. About starting over. And somewhere in between those conversations, something began to grow. Not fast. Not forced. But real. For the first time in years, Annie slept peacefully. But outside, the world wasn't quiet. Videos had already spread. Clips of the confrontation. The ring. The words. The moment. And by morning, everything would change again. Morning came with noise. Not from outside, but from Annie's phone. It kept buzzing. Again. And again. And again. Annie frowned slightly as she reached for it. Still half asleep. Still wrapped in the peace she hadn't felt in years. But the moment she unlocked her screen, her heart dropped. Messages. Dozens. No, hundreds. Notifications flooding in. Her name. Her face. Everywhere. What is this? She whispered. Her fingers trembled as she opened one of the videos. And there it was. The cafe. The confrontation. Han-jun grabbing her wrist. Her removing the ring. Her voice. I'm freeing myself. The video cut. But the impact stayed. She scrolled. More clips. Different angles. Different captions. African woman rejects Korean CEO publicly. Han Swift tech scandal. Investors reacting. Powerful breakup goes viral. Her chest tightened. This is everywhere. She quickly stood up. Walked out of her room. Chung-hee was already awake. Sitting calmly in the living room. Watching the news. Of course he knew. You've seen it, she asked. He nodded. Yes. Her voice dropped. They recorded everything. He turned to her. Did you expect them not to? She paused. No. Deep down, she knew. Annie sat down slowly. This is bad, she said. For him. Chung-hee didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her. Studying her reaction. You're worried about him, he asked. She hesitated. I don't know. And that was the truth. Because despite everything, a part of her still felt something. Not love. Not anymore. But history. Chung-hee leaned forward slightly. Actions have consequences, Annie, he said calmly. He made his choices. She nodded slowly. I know. Her phone buzzed again. This time. A call. Mrs. Han. Annie stared at the name for a second. Then picked up. Annie, Mrs. Han's voice came through quickly. I saw the video. Of course she did. Everyone had. I'm calling to apologize, she continued. On behalf of my son. Annie's expression didn't change. I see. There's been damage, Mrs. Han added. His company, investors are pulling out. Annie stayed silent. She's trying to fix it, Chung-hee thought quietly as he watched her. Please, Mrs. Han continued. Find it in your heart to forgive him. That word. Forgive. It echoed. Loud. Sharp. Annie let out a small, bitter laugh. Forgive him, she repeated. Yes. No, Annie cut in. Her voice was calm, but firm. I tried to talk to your son many times, she said. I tried to fix things. Silence on the other end. But you both ignored me, Annie continued. You didn't correct him. You supported him. Mrs. Han didn't respond. You looked down on me, Annie added. And now, you want forgiveness. Another silence. Longer this time. His suffering, Mrs. Han said softly. Annie's eyes hardened slightly. So was I. The line went quiet. I've moved on, Annie finished. There's nothing more to discuss. She ended the call. The room felt still again. Chung-hee watched her carefully. You didn't hesitate, he said. Annie shook her head slowly. I've hesitated enough in my life. A soft silence followed. Then, why did you help me? Annie asked suddenly. Chung-hee didn't answer immediately. His expression changed. Not cold. Not distant. But heavy. Like something buried was about to surface. He leaned back slowly. My mother died because of a relationship like yours. Annie froze. The words hit hard. What? He exhaled quietly. She stayed, he continued. Even when she was being hurt. His voice was calm. But the pain was there. Hidden. Deep. She kept saying she didn't want to start over, he added. She believed things would change. Annie's chest tightened. Because that sounded familiar. Too familiar. One day, Chung-hee continued. He pushed her. The room went silent. Completely. She fell down the stairs. Annie covered her mouth. Oh my God. I was 6, he said. No emotion. Just truth. When I came back, it was already over. The words felt heavy. Too heavy. He's in prison now, Chung-hee added quietly. My aunt raised me. Annie's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. Chung-hee shook his head slightly. I built everything I have from nothing, he said. I promised myself I would never watch someone go through that again, if I could stop it. That was it. That was why. Not pity. Not curiosity. But purpose. Annie looked at him differently now. Not just as a man who helped her, but as someone who understood her pain. Before she even spoke it. I wasn't going to let you disappear like that, he said. Her chest tightened. Because that was exactly what she had been doing. Disappearing. Slowly. Quietly. Do you think, Annie hesitated, you'll ever forgive him? Chung-hee's expression didn't change. No. Simple. Final. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was honest. Later that day, Annie stood by the window, looking outside. The world was still moving. Cars. People. Life. But inside her, everything had changed. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of being alone. Not of starting over. Because now, she understood something clearly. Staying would have cost her everything. Behind her, Chung-hee watched quietly, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel it. Not just concern, not just responsibility, but something deeper. Something growing. And Annie, she felt it too. But she wasn't ready to name it yet. The city felt different that evening. Or maybe, Annie was the one who had changed. She walked beside Chung-hee along the Han River, her steps slow, her shoulders relaxed. The breeze brushed softly against her skin. The sky glowed in shades of orange and deep blue. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about the past. She wasn't thinking about Han Jun. She was just Present. You're quiet, Chung-hee said, glancing at her. Annie smiled softly. I'm thinking. About what? She hesitated. Then said it honestly. Peace. That made him pause. Peace, he repeated. She nodded. I forgot what it felt like. There was something about the way she said it. Soft. Real. Like someone who had been holding pain for too long. They continued walking. Side by side. Not too close. Not too far. Just right. Do you want to see my place? Chung-hee asked suddenly. Annie turned to him. Your house. He nodded. You don't have to if you're not comfortable. She studied his face. There was no pressure. No hidden meaning. Just a simple offer. She smiled. Okay. His house was breathtaking. Modern. Wide. Elegant. The kind of place that spoke of success without needing to prove it. Annie stepped inside slowly, her eyes taking everything in. You're very rich, she said quietly. Chung-hee gave a small smile. I worked for it. She nodded. I can tell. Sit, he said gently. I'll cook. Annie raised a brow. You cook? Don't sound so surprised. She laughed softly. I didn't expect it. Well, you're about to be impressed. The kitchen filled with warmth. The smell of food. The quiet sound of cooking. Annie watched him for a moment. His movements were calm, focused, comfortable. Nothing like Hanjun. Hanjun never cooked. Never slowed down. Never cared like this. Stop staring, Chung-hee said without looking back. Annie blinked. I wasn't staring. You were. She laughed again. And this time, it came easy. They sat down to eat minutes later. The food looked simple, but neat. Carefully made. Annie took a bite. Paused. Then looked at him. This is good. He leaned back slightly. Just good. She smiled. Very good. He nodded, satisfied. I'll take that. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The lights were softer now. The mood quieter. More personal. Can I ask you something? Chung-hee said. You always do, Annie replied. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. A pause. Then. How do you feel now? She didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands. Then back at him. Free, she said. The word came out slowly, carefully. But it was true. Another silence followed. But this one was different. It carried something new. Something unspoken. Their eyes met. Held. And for a moment, the world outside disappeared. Chung-hee leaned slightly closer. Not fast. Not sudden. Just enough. Giving her time. Giving her space. Annie's heart raced. She knew what was coming. And for once, she didn't feel fear. He stopped just inches away. Tell me to stop, and I will, he said quietly. Annie shook her head slowly. I don't want you to. That was all he needed. He closed the distance. Gently. Carefully. Their lips met. Soft at first. Then deeper. Warmer. Real. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was right. Like something that had been waiting. When they pulled apart, Annie's breath was uneven. Her heart pounding. But she smiled. Not nervous. Not unsure. Just happy. I didn't expect that, she whispered. Neither did I, he replied. But I'm not complaining. She laughed softly. That night felt different. Like a beginning. Not something forced. Not something rushed. But something real. Finally growing. Later that morning, her phone rang. She answered. Annie. It was Hanjun. His voice sounded different. Weaker. Tired. She didn't speak. I lost everything, he said quietly. Silence. Heavy. I didn't know it would go this far. Annie closed her eyes briefly. But she didn't interrupt. I'm sorry, he said. Those two words. Late. Too late. I should have treated you better. Her chest tightened slightly. But not like before. This time. It didn't hurt. Annie opened her eyes. You had your chance, she said calmly. Silence. Then. I know. I hope you find peace, she added. And she meant it. The call ended. Annie stood still for a moment. Then slowly, she smiled. Not because he lost everything, but because she finally found herself. Behind her, Chung-hee watched quietly, and in that moment, he knew. This wasn't just something temporary. This was real. And Annie, she felt it too. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, Annie's life became something she once thought was impossible. Peaceful. The same woman who once sat quietly at tables, afraid to speak, now stood confidently in boardrooms, leading, speaking, deciding. At Hebon Bank, Annie had grown beyond expectations. Her ideas were bold. Her strategies were different. And that difference was exactly what made her valuable. One afternoon, she stood inside a large conference hall. Executives seated. Investors watching. The room filled with attention. Chung-hee stood at the front. Profit has increased by 80% this quarter, he announced. Murmurs filled the room. Impressed. Excited. Then, this success, he continued, is largely due to one person. He turned. Looked at her. Annie. Her heart skipped. She wasn't expecting that. He gestured for her to come forward. And this time, she didn't hesitate. She walked with confidence. With purpose. I would like to officially announce her promotion, Chung-hee said. Annie is now the general manager of Hebon Bank Seoul. The room erupted. Applause. Approval. Respect. Annie smiled. But her eyes glistened slightly. Because she remembered who she used to be. And how far she had come. Later that evening, they sat together in his office. The lights were dim. The city glowing outside. You did that on purpose, Annie said, smiling. Chung-hee leaned back. You deserved it. She shook her head. You always do this. Do what? Believe in me more than I believe in myself. He looked at her. Serious now. Because I see you clearly. That sentence. It never lost its power. A soft silence followed. Then Annie spoke again. I've been thinking. Chung-hee raised a brow. That usually leads to something serious. She laughed. It is. A pause. Then. I'm ready. He sat up slightly. Ready for what? She met his eyes. For us. The room went still. I didn't want to rush before, she continued. I was scared. I didn't want to lose myself again. Chung-hee nodded slowly. I understand. But now, she said softly. I know who I am. Her voice was steady. I don't need saving anymore. A small smile formed on his lips. I never wanted to save you. I know, she replied. You just stood beside me. That was enough. That was everything. I love you, Chung-hee said quietly. The words were simple. But heavy. Real. Annie's breath caught slightly. Then she smiled. I love you too. The distance between them disappeared. And this time, the kiss felt different. Deeper. Certain. Like something that wasn't going anywhere. 1 week later, Chung-hee stood in front of her again. But this time, he was holding a ring. Annie blinked. Wait, are you? Yes, he said. No long speech. No drama. Just truth. I'm not perfect, he continued. But I will always respect you. Her eyes filled with tears. I will always see you. Her heart tightened. I will never make you feel small. That broke her. In the best way. Will you marry me? He asked. Annie laughed softly through her tears. Yes. Months later. They stood together. Married. Happy. At peace. Their home was filled with laughter now. Not silence. Not tension. Just warmth. One morning, Annie stood in front of the mirror again. But this time, she wasn't searching for approval. She was smiling. Her hand rested gently on her stomach. And she whispered, I'm going to be a mother. That evening, she told Chung-hee. He froze. Then laughed. Then pulled her into a tight embrace. I'm going to be a father. She nodded, smiling. And in that moment, everything felt complete. The next morning, her phone buzzed. A message. From Han Jun. She stared at the screen, hesitated, then opened it. I finally understand, the message read. You never know what you have until you lose it. Her expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, he continued. I rushed into another marriage to save my company, but it failed. A pause. I lost everything. Annie exhaled slowly. Not in pain. Not in anger. Just acceptance. I've sold the company, the message ended. I'm starting over. I hope you're happy. She stared at the phone for a moment. Then locked it. She didn't reply. Not because she was bitter, but because she had already moved on. I forgive you, she whispered quietly. Not for him, but for herself. Behind her, Chung-hee walked in, wrapped his arms around her gently. You okay? He asked. She leaned into him. Yes. And she meant it. She looked out the window. At the city. At life. At everything ahead. Once. She thought love meant sacrifice. Now. She knew the truth. Love was not meant to shrink you. It was meant to grow you. And Annie. She didn't just find love. She found herself.